hands with Dorothy, fighting for your civil rights. Out on the cruel streets tonight. For Sylvia and Marcia, life was harder than you'll ever know. Still they placed a star where others just threw a stone.
Good afternoon and welcome to LGBTQ+life on 103.2 Dublin City FM and being live streamed on DublinCity-FM.ie, and I'm your host, Mick Fitzgerald. In February 2022, the Midlands LGBTQ+ Project celebrated its first anniversary. So, to mark this auspicious occasion, we have as two guests from the project, we have Christina Fitzharris, who is the project coordinator, and Sam Kelly, who is a volunteer with the project. They marked this occasion with the unveiling of an absolutely fabulous mural on the gable end of a house down there in PortLaoise. And they're here today to tell us about not only the range of great services that they offer, but their plans for 2022 and beyond. We're delighted here on LGBTQ+life to go out to another part of the country today and bring information about some of the activities and some of the support services outside of Dublin. And my guests today are Christina Fitzharris, who is the coordinator with the Midlands LGBTQ Project, if I've got that correct, Christina? Yeah, and Sam Kelly, who is a volunteer with the project down there. So you're very welcome to the programme, and we're delighted to have you as guests here today. Yeah. Christina, I'm going to start with yourself. First of all, I want to congratulate you. I gather you had your first anniversary a few weeks ago, and it must be very satisfying to get to that particular point.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, thanks a million for having us on. It's great to be able to speak to a wider audience and find different ways of putting out what we're doing and our activities and whatnot. So yeah, we celebrated our first birthday or anniversary last week. As some people will have seen, we celebrated with a new LGBT mural in PortLaoise, which has been hugely successful. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we've had a jam-packed year, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Can I put it to you, Christina, you're pretty much getting in on the ground floor on this project, in the sense that it only started a year ago, and I suspect you've been the coordinator since that time. It's both challenging and to a certain degree intimidating to get in at that level. How have you found it so far?
I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a funny one. I kind of, when I took on the role, I anticipated that finding adult LGBT plus people in the Midlands to come along to different groups would be much more difficult than it actually has been. I thought the work would be a lot more outreach, and that has not been the case at all. Actually, once we started advertising, people came in there, in huge numbers, and we now have 9 or 10 groups per month across Laois and Offaly. So and about 100 to 150 service users per month.
Yep. Sam, on the other hand, Christina, when we were speaking last week, she told me that she didn't grow up in the Midlands. I gather you did. So can I ask you?
Yes.
what was the area like from an LGBTQ plus perspective before this organisation or before this project was initiated?
In my experience, pretty much non-existent. I grew up in Laois. I've been in Laois my whole life, and it wasn't until college that I really met that many LGBT people. So my only experience really was media and stuff like that, which is still very scarce, to be fair. So this organization has completely changed that very fast, in my opinion.
Mhm. From an outsider's perspective, when we think of Laois, the first thing we think of is a prison. Now, I know from being down there, although the prison looms large when you come into PortLaoise from Dublin, there's a lot more diversity happening there. But how much of the that do you think permeates back up to people like ourselves in the city? Do we still have this tunnel vision? Oh, Laois, that's where you go because you've done something wrong. It's
Well, there's definitely a lot of running jokes.
uh,
For example, we were just very surprised at how quickly the organization grown, because we're like LGBT people specifically. There's not even that many people in general. People tend to try to get out of Laois, not get back in, you know.
uh, well, that's a very interesting one just to put to you. Most people assume that, oh, well, LGBTQ plus people, they all want to go somewhere else. They all want to go to big cities and somewhere that's got bright lights. But my experience is that most people want to live in the place where they grew up. That's the environment they're familiar with. That's their comfort zone to a certain degree. What's your thoughts on that, both of you? Because I mean, you didn't grow up in Laois, Christina, but you moved there. You come from somewhere close by.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the main aims, I suppose, of the Midlands LGBT plus project, is that we give people a space to be in the Midlands and be queer in the Midlands, to be LGBT plus in the Midlands, to be whatever they want to be in the Midlands. That it's not, it's not offering things outside of the Midlands. It's not saying, come up to Dublin, we'll all take a trip up to Dublin for a night out. One of our kind of main focus points is that we stay in the Midlands and we show people that there is, a huge amount of queer people there, that there is a community ready to be made there. And that's, that's kind of what we want to do, is that for people, because we see a lot of people like that moving back home to Laois after time away, but also a huge influx of people now buying houses that maybe have been priced out of Dublin or have been priced out of nearby counties. So we're seeing a lot of people coming from cities that would have had a buzzing gay scene to the Midlands, and they're going, oh God, where are we going to find our community and our tribe here? So that's kind of what we aim to do.
Sure. Can I put that question to you, Sam? Because I did a piece last year with Wexford. Now, I have always seen Wexford as quite a sizable town, but yet they were telling me there was only one place, there was one coffee shop or one cafe one restaurant where people went and met. There wasn't even what we would euphemistically call a gay bar. What was the situation like in Laois, Sam? When you were coming to terms with growing up as an LGBTQ plus person?
Like, absolutely, yeah. There wasn't really a gay scene of any sense, or a place to meet people who were also LGBT. You definitely know of people, but there was very little formal places, like actually like structures to go to with people. But the last year, just being involved with this project has kind of made me fall back in love with Laois and the Midlands, and there's places I didn't know about at all that I'm now discovering, even just from a general point of view, like places of interest and places to meet people and stuff like that. Like, there's much more of a sense of community that I've discovered just from being involved.
Yeah. Christina, Sam used a word there, and I want to put it to you and ask for your view on it. Sam talked about a gay scene. Now, up here, we tend to talk more about a gay community or an LGBT plus community. In other words, we've evolved from, we just go out there on a Friday night or a Saturday night, do some ripping and yahooing, have good fun, and then go back to our relatively straight lives on the Monday. How important then do you think that is of evolving that sense of community as opposed to just what we would call the media created image of what LGBTQ plus is?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Nobody is gay on Saturday and not on Monday. So it's trying to create that kind of more wholesome sense of community, that there are options for everyone. We have, you know, like having non-alcoholic nights, having nights that do involve alcohol for people that want to do that. We have coffee mornings and different kind of interest groups like queer book clubs and Sam's new queer film club. So it's important that we do have kind of things for everybody, but also things on all the time that people can get involved in to create more of a community. And I actually think that's one of the reasons we were so successful, is because of COVID, everybody was locked down and we were getting huge numbers of people ringing and saying, I'm not out and I've survived my whole life, and it could have been 50, 60 years. I've survived my whole life in Laois not being out, because I would go to Dublin once a month and I would go to George or I would go wherever, and I was out essentially for 1 or 2 nights of the month, and then I can come home and I can, you know, pretend, or I can live on for another month, having that in my sights that I'm doing it again next month. And that was taken from people during COVID. And I don't think people, you know, most people didn't realize the impact that would have on people. So they spent a year or nearly 2 years locked up and not having that on the horizon at all. And it for a lot of people meant that they started looking for it closer to home, within their 5K, or where could they find supports closer to them.
Yep. Sam, I'm going to ask you about your film society, because I've said that the television event of 2021 was it's a sin. And for people of my generation who grew up with HIV when it emerged first, I don't know anybody who didn't watch that series and didn't have tears running down their faces by halfway through the first episode. What are you hoping to achieve through the film club? Because everybody I've spoken to said, yes, this is something that your generation should watch, just so we get that continuity of how the LGBT scene evolved and some of the major challenges that the community faced, particularly in relation to HIV/AIDS.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, we're hoping to just expand people's knowledge of LGBT culture. Like, even within the community, I would have very little knowledge about that stuff up until recently, because where would I have heard it? It's not in schools or in other places like that. So we want a space where people can actually explore that and discuss it with each other in an LGBT space. So the group is going to be very led by the members. Like, they'll be voting on what films they want to see each month, and it'll be very catered to the people that actually attend.
Can I put something to you? I mean, while you can watch a piece of cinema or you can watch a piece of television and you can get it from a phenomenological point of view, I suppose the difference with people of my generation as opposed to yours, and I'm not putting this in any other context, when I look at LGBTQ, when I looked at It's a Sin, it reminded me of the people I knew who died, and that's a phenomenal impact. So all I can say is, if you consider it, if you're going to show those sorts of movies, there's lots of people around who you could invite, perhaps. There's particularly good people in Cork who are HIV positive and who would be able to share that with you on a very personal level. So I'm going to offer that one to you as a consideration. The other side of the coin, Christina, before we talk about the actual work that the project does, looking at, if you like, third-party entertainment in the sense of film, theatre, even listening to podcasts, that's all very well. What about live entertainment? And I don't know how far your, if you like, your geographic remit goes, but over the last, say, couple of months, I've been doing some work with a drag burlesque group who are performing now in Kildare. And I'm just wondering, does that come into your geographic area, and how important would it be for to have something like that within your area?
Yeah, so our geographical area is Laois and Offaly, and then we also cover some of Kildare. So Kildare does come into our remit as well. And like that, we tend to have other counties come over to us. So we get a lot of people from Westmeath or Tipperary or Kilkenny that travel up for groups from time to time. So we have quite a wide geographical area, I suppose. In terms of live entertainment and things, it is an area that we are looking to kind of get a little bit more into. So last year we just couldn't with COVID have anything. But we did, when we were able to, had our official launch last September, which was a phenomenal day. We had a kind of a family friendly daytime event with drag queen bingo and live radio station Midlands 103 there all day, and different kind of activities for kids, families and adults. And then at nighttime we had a drag show and a band and stuff for adults. And then now in April, so next month, April 23rd, we'll be having our official launch into Offaly. So we'll be doing quite a similar event there, but it is now that restrictions have eased an awful lot, we are looking at getting a little bit more into live entertainment.
Yep. And something that I want to put to yourself, Sam, because I know that you're responsible, or at least you're involved in supporting the trans people in the area. Now, when I got involved with Tenny, what we discovered is that as soon as you start promoting your services and awareness that there is a facility to go to, what you discover is that there's a great deal more trans people out there than often is realized. What's your experience so far? And I appreciate it's early days yet, but is that what you're discovering, that people are discreetly coming to you, or even openly coming to you, that previously may have been very isolated, very lonely, and now they find that they've got somewhere and somebody to talk to?
Definitely, yeah, it's definitely needed. It's still early days and the group is quite small compared to the general LGBT group, but we get regulars and we have people actually building friendships within these groups and developing a support network, which is obviously especially important for the trans community with issues of coming out and then dealing with transitioning and family. There's a lot of isolation, and obviously the Midlands being in such an isolated rural area contributes to that. So the group being online allows people to check in from anywhere around the Midlands. There's no border there of having to deal with transport or things like that. And it also allows them the anonymity of where they don't have to be nervous about being in a public space at an event if they're not ready to be seen out as trans or expressing themselves in a certain way. So it's a vital group to have there.
Yeah. Again, and I want to just go back from the experience we found at Tenny, is that people all often assume that trans it's urban or it's metropolitan. But what we discovered, particularly when we started to launch the campaign for the gender equality legislation, is that there were people who were living on farms. There were people who were living in very, very isolated areas who were trans, and suddenly, when they've got even just a phone call that they can make, they were able to identify and develop some sort of self-awareness and self-esteem. You're going to find that, I think, anyway, but has that been some of your experience up to date?
Yeah, like the second the service is available, you see the need for it because of how many people actually come to it again and again.
Christina, I'm going to go back to your anniversary and what we call up here the mural. You created this fabulous mural to celebrate the first anniversary. I've put it up on my Facebook group called LGBT+life. Everybody loved it. How did it come about, and who do we need to give credit for that?
Yeah, so it was, to be honest, I always have a little black book of ideas for when bits of funding pop up here, there and everywhere that we can just revert back to it and see, would this be eligible for this, or would that be eligible for something? So it was something that I had kind of wanted to do, but to be honest, I thought it would take us much longer to get there. And some funding when I proposed it to Healthy Ireland Laois. They really just jumped at it, and they thought it was a wonderful idea. So a huge thank you, I suppose, to the Laois Local Development Committee and Healthy Ireland Laois who funded the entire project, and allowed us, I suppose, complete creative control over it. They whatever we wanted to do, and help us sourcing a wall and kind of negotiating with different things. So that's how we started it. And then I found an artist, ADW Art, Adam. So Adam is a Portarlington native, so just down the road from us. And I didn't even know that he was local to us when I contacted him. So that was a great bonus. And he had done similar pieces in the past, and I had seen his work. And again, he jumped on the chance to get involved. So there was so many stakeholders, so many little people that you really didn't need to play their part, but they did, to make it all come together, even down to, the man that owned the wall, the business that occupied the premises, all of these people gave it up freely and came together to do it, which was fantastic.
What is your, shall we say, feedback, Sam? Have you heard any negative comments from people regarding it, or is it what we would hope largely positive?
I actually had so many people text me about it unprompted, just saying, "Oh, do you know about this new mural in PortLaoise? It's gorgeous, like it's a big LGBT wall." And yeah, like it's been overwhelmingly positive. And it looks really nice, and even just in general, it really brightens up that area and adds a bit of flash to the centre of PortLaoise. It's lovely.
Yeah. Christina, as the coordinator, can we just go into a little bit of what is the project about? What are the services it offers, and how do you go about delivering those services?
Yeah, so I suppose our main aim is to reduce isolation among LGBT plus people in the Midlands. That's our kind of umbrella aim. We do lots of things in addition to this, but that's really what we want to achieve. And we do this primarily through our groups. So we have peer support groups and then social groups. We currently have, I think, 9 or 10 groups, ranging from, we have a Laois social group and an Offaly social group. We have 2 queer book clubs, the Trans Midlands group, Sam's new Fab Film group. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We have a brand new over 50s group, which is I suppose I'm very, very excited about, and that's one that I'm really hoping that we can expand on. It's only had its first meeting last month, and they'll meet again next week. And we have a very small but enthusiastic group of people that have really, many of them been very, very isolated for a long time, and I would love to see that group grow and see them all make connections of people in similar stages of life that have things in common. So we also have some coffee mornings, fortnightly coffee mornings. And Sam, I'm not sure if I'm forgetting any groups here. I could be. We have so we're actually we are starting some archery lessons, some beginner archery lessons, which is kind of a new, and this is what we're moving from now, is having our core support groups with like our trans group and our over 50s group, and also adding in a lot of kind of more social groups like the film club and the book club and the archery and sports. So a huge thank you to Sporting Pride, which have helped us with funding and getting the archery off the ground.
Mm-hmm. I've got to put something to you, and I can appreciate if you haven't gone down this path yet. At the very beginning, I mentioned, dare I say it, the prison. Now, it's difficult enough to be in prison, but to be in prison and LGBT, it is twice as difficult as it is just for the ordinary prisoners. Have you got any plans to at least do some, what we would call outreach to that particular location?
Yeah, so we do a lot of outreach and kind of one-to-one work, like more confidential work with people in the psychiatric hospital in PortLaoise, the prison in PortLaoise, and any other kind of services. So I do a lot of that work, and it would take up, I suppose, a lot of our time outside of groups. We also train professionals and organisations in Laois and Offaly. So recently we trained, I think it was about 100 secondary school teachers across both counties, which was hugely successful in kind of helping them create their own safe spaces in schools and being more, more educated and more knowledgeable on it. And the same, we work closely with the community guards and the prison officers and TUSLA staff and stuff like that.
Very good, very good. That's exactly what I think people want to hear. Sam, I'm going to come back to yourself. Again, you have a great input into the trans community, and you would have quite a lot of knowledge about not only the people, but the needs down there. Something we're even conscious of in Dublin is the poor health facilities or poor health services for people who are trans. What's the situation down there? I suspect you probably don't have a lot of GPs, and even in the hospitals, people who are, shall we say, educated to support the medical needs of trans people.
Yeah, in my personal experience, most of the information and advice I have found through my transition has been from other trans people and their own personal experience. It doesn't tend to be from formal resources. Now, Tenny was obviously a resource to an extent as well, but I find a lot of that information comes from other members of the community, and I'd love to organise that information and maybe apply it to our own organisation, that we have informational resources there that I can then give to people within the trans group and things like that.
Sure, yeah. You've mentioned Tenny there. How important is it for how important is it for groups like yourselves that are decentralised to be able to draw on their knowledge, their expertise in these areas?
Oh, very important, yeah, because obviously one of the concerns when you're getting most of your information from other people who aren't part of an organisation is that some of the information might be not accurate or outdated or more harmful than helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, somebody who comes from Christina's neck of the woods, which is Waterford, is my good friend Vanessa Lacey, and I'm sure if you contact Vanessa, she is just absolute goldmine in terms of support, in terms of empathy, and in terms of so many areas. So I cannot recommend Vanessa too highly to you. Yeah. Christina, coming back now, I appreciate again it's early days, but what sort of recognition and support are you getting, particularly from local councils? Because these days we find that councils are very supportive of, particularly around Pride, and they're happy to put up rainbow flags and things like that. What's the situation down there in the Midlands?
Yeah, so we've been very lucky, especially with Laois County Council have been very supportive since day one, and they have helped us, I suppose, with support and advice, but also financially when we have needed it. And they've also always been very open. We have a local councillor sit on our steering board, and they're always kind of quite involved in everything we're doing and supporting that, which is great.
Yeah. I know you haven't had a Pride yet, but are there plans to have a Pride March, if not this year, in the next couple of years?
Hopefully, yeah. To be honest, I feel it is something that I would love our members to pick up and come from a more grassroots kind of perspective than from an organisation and staff members. I think Pride should be something that comes from them and gets a lot of support from us. So I think as we grow, we will naturally, with our volunteers, help them form into a Pride committee if that's what they want to do.
Yeah, well,
And just judging from the response from our Laois event, it would go down so well. Like it's clearly wanted.
well, there are smaller places than Laois that are having Pride parades, and I think what people find, it's the visibility that becomes hugely important, because I think it was Enniskillen I did one last year, and we're relatively liberal in places like Laois and the Midlands compared to, say, Mid-Ulster. So I think you'd be surprised at the support you will get. So it's assuming that COVID and war stay out of our ambit, then the future looks very bright for the LGBTQ plus community in the Midlands. So we're going to run out of time here, but I just want to thank you for your help and your support today, because it is terrific to see new areas like this new resources like this springing up, because they're so vital to the local community. And we look forward to having you as a guest again in the future, and keep us posted of any developments or any events that you've got happening as well. So yeah, so Christina and Sam, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure having you as guests.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Friends of Dorothy come out off the sidewalk and onto the street to the sound of those legendary feet. When there's no place like home, anti-establishment, with the chaff and the short straw, they'll have a stuff for sure. Anti-M, I'm anti-establishment.